Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of On the Sidelines. My name is Matthew Limberti,
My name is Benedict Rhodes.
and we hope everyone continues to stay safe, of course, during some tough times during COVID-19. Have you been getting up to anything exciting lately, Ben?
No, we're starting to get more lockdowns, I guess, in Ontario now. Both the regions where we live are starting to tighten up a bit, so can't really do much at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I'm in one of those lockdown regions here, and yeah, but it's just tough. It's tough to go through it again, unfortunately, but hey,
Hopefully,
hopefully it
hopefully
improves.
2020 ends well and 2021 stuff starts to sort of clear up a bit.
Yeah, let's hope so, definitely. But yeah, that's what I have to say.
I guess let's jump into topic number one then, which is NFL Week 11. Just ended last night. Today's Tuesday, so Monday Night Football was yesterday. Um, that was Week 11, like I said. Matthew, what was the biggest game from Week 11?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there was a lot of big games from this past week. I mean, there's like you can make a case for every primetime game, like Thursday, Sunday, Monday night game, and also, of course, on Sunday afternoon. But yeah, for me, I would say the Chiefs and Raiders game for me on Sunday night was one of the bigger games. Um, of course, I think the Chiefs looked kind of vulnerable in their second game against the Raiders this season, and I think the Raiders have a potential maybe to, like, if they meet in the playoffs, which can be a potential. I mean, maybe the Raiders have a chance to upset them, but that would be highly undoubtable because it's Patrick Mahomes. So who knows if that would happen? But I think, yeah, the Raiders showed that. I mean, they can be a contender and potentially, like I said, beat this team. Um, if it weren't for the Raiders giving back the ball to Mahomes in that fourth quarter, which was, I think they gave him like a minute or so left. I mean, the Raiders could have won that game and swept the season series with them. But like I said, I think if they both meet again in the playoffs, it would be an exciting game to, if they both rematched again.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the Raiders had a chance to take the season series, which would have been a pretty big statement of intent from them. Um, for me, I think I'm going to go with the Rams beating the Bucks on Monday night. Um, the Rams are now 7-3. The Bucks are now 7-4. The Rams ended up winning 27-24. Um, I thought Jared Goff had a big game. He had 376 yards with 3 touchdowns, so he led the Rams to another win. I think the Rams are also proving now that they can contend, or I think they're already contending, but now they're proving they can beat some of the best teams in the National Football Conference and the rest of the league, of course, too. They're now tied with the Seahawks at the top of the NFC West, and as we'll get to later, I think maybe one of the contenders to maybe win the division. So we'll have to see what they can do the rest of the way. But for now, I think that was a pretty big win.
Yeah, besides the ones we mentioned, I mean, I did mention there were a couple other big games. Did you have another one to like an honorable mention?
There's a few big games this week. A couple of close games, like the Colts just barely beat the Packers, 34-31. Um, Another one that maybe wasn't a big game but had a big moment was Joe Burrow going down. He's out for the season in a 20 to
Mm.
9 loss against the Washington football team. So that was another big one. Um, the Titans beat the Ravens 30-24. So some close games and some games which had some sort of big outcomes, I guess. What about you?
Yeah, I think you did mention the Burrow injury. I think obviously we're all praying for him, and of course he's in his rookie year coming out of LSU and the first overall pick in the draft, or just in this past draft. So I mean, you know, it's very unfortunate for a rookie quarterback to go through that kind of situation like he did on Sunday. And like I said, hopefully he'll be able to recover sooner than later. I think people are saying that next season is in jeopardy for him because I think he tore his ACL and was it his MCL too, if I'm not wrong. If
Something like
if
that. Yeah.
someone, yeah, yeah. So it was like a major injury for him. So I mean, obviously we're all hoping that he can come back sooner than later. But yeah, when it comes to big games, you mentioned, I think you perfectly mentioned all the other big games, Titans, Ravens, and Colts being the Packers. All games went to overtime, or both games, I should say, went to overtime. I think also something else to mention is the Saints beating the Falcons. I know that's not a huge game for the Saints, but I think this is the Saints' first game without Drew Brees, and I think their quarterback Taysom Hill, who threw for 233 passing yards before going into the game, he had like under 20 passing attempts or something at like in his whole NFL career, something crazy like that. So I mean, I think it shows that the Saints obviously, I mean, Drew Brees makes them a better contender than they are right now, but I think it shows that you know it's just like last season when they had Bridgewater at quarterback and he went 5-0, I think, or he didn't lose a game. So I think Hill is in that kind of situation right now.
Yeah, another interesting sort of storyline was the Dolphins pulling Tua Tagovailoa out of the game for Ryan Fitzpatrick midway through the game. Their loss against the Denver Broncos. The Dolphins are saying he's still their starter, Tua, and they just thought that Fitzpatrick gave him a better chance to win the game. I think is what they said. But still, it's sort of something to keep an eye on, I guess, down the stretch here.
Yeah, for sure. I guess now we'll move to week 12. Of course, the regular season is coming down to the stretch with only 6 weeks left. Going into week 12, Ben, which game would you say is the biggest one in the schedule?
Yeah, there's a few interesting games, but I'm going to go with the Ravens and Steelers. We've kind of been, or I certainly have been, sort of praising the Steelers all year, saying that they're maybe the best team in the NFL. And I think they're also 10-0. Like their biggest chance, I think, to lose a game this year down the rest of the stretch is against the Ravens, and this game could prove to be that game. So it's interesting to see as well if Lamar Jackson can step up in a big game. That's something he's been criticized for in the past, is maybe not stepping up in the biggest moments. So this is his chance to prove the doubters wrong, and it's also the Steelers' chance to prove that they are a team worthy of going maybe 16-0.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree that that Thanksgiving game is a huge one for both teams, I would say. I think right now the Ravens are struggling with two back-to-back losses. One was just this past weekend against the Titans, as I mentioned. And the Steelers, of course, I mean, having a perfect season right now, 10-0, as you mentioned. I think for me, I mean, looking at the Week 12 schedule, I think the big game for me is the Titans at the Colts. Of course, this is their second matchup for the two AFC South rivals in the past 3 weeks. So, I mean, I think obviously this game is going to be going to play a big role in who wins this division. I mean, of course, there's still going to be 5 games for each team after that. So who knows how each team will fare in the next month and a half or so. But yeah, I think this is a big game for both teams, and I think going down the stretch for the AFC South to see who will be a true contender in these playoffs, because I think both teams are pretty good like on both sides. So yeah.
Yeah. What about any honorable mentions?
Yeah, I think also one game that we didn't mention was the Chiefs and Bucks. I think obviously the Bucks have had their struggles this season. I mean, we just saw it yesterday at the in the Monday night game against the Rams. I think there was also a stat like for their primetime games. Although this isn't necessarily a primetime game, I think they were like 1-3 or something this season. Their only win coming against the Giants, which which should be a win anyways. But against the other teams they played, one being the Saints and like I mentioned the Rams. I think this is a big game for the Bucks, and to see if they're actually a true contender in the NFC, because right now they are kind of slipping right now. Although I think they'll make the playoffs. Of course, we can't doubt the Chiefs, of course, because they're just having a great season as they were predicted to have. And yeah, this is another big game for me. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. That's probably the biggest game that we didn't mention, I think. And then also the storyline of the best quarterback in the league, Patrick Mahomes, against maybe the greatest ever, and Tom Brady is always one that's fun to watch. And that's sure that's going to continue again this weekend.
Yeah. Oh, and I was going to say, because we still have one division that's pretty outstanding that we're going to make our predictions on after is the NFC East, and
Everyone's
on
favorite.
yeah, the best division in football. In the NFC East, on Thursday, there's the Washington football team's playing Dallas for potentially one taking over the other in the NFC East right now. But I mean, crazy to think that all four teams actually have 3 wins, and I think anybody potentially has a chance to win that division, which is just kind of crazy to see.
Yeah, like if the Eagles didn't have that tie earlier in the season, every team would have been. To say they had lost that game, every team would have been 3-7, which is kind of interesting. And like any of these teams can win the division. As we'll get to later, we'll predict our division winners. Um, I think all these teams should be division losers, but um, I guess we'll find out come in 6 or 7 weeks time who actually ends up winning this division.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I guess moving on from the Week 12 schedule, as we do every week, we give our prediction, or we should say our best teams from both the AFC and NFC. Who would you say from each conference is the best?
Yeah, continuing my theme in the AFC, picking the Steelers, I'll go with them again. Uh, I'll give a shout out as well to Chase Claypool, Mapletron. He has I think 10 touchdowns in his first 10 NFL games. He's the first player in the Super Bowl era and the fourth ever, I believe, to do that. So nice. Probably the first Canadian, I'm assuming as well, of those four. So shout out to him. Big Ben looks good. Ben Roethlisberger. Again, they're 10-0. I'm gonna keep sort of going for them every week, I think, until they lose. And in the NFC, I'm going to go with the Saints. I think they proved they can win without Drew Brees this weekend. Obviously, still plenty of season left for them to continue to prove that. I think they're in a good place, though.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree that. I mean, obviously the Steelers are 10-0. We can't doubt their how great they've been this season. Of course, with Roethlisberger being back in his form and Chase Claypool, I should say, being a great Canadian player. But I mean, for me, I'm going to stick with the Chiefs. And although I know they barely beat the Raiders this past weekend, and that's really been the only team they struggled against. I mean, there have been a couple of other wins again for the Chiefs, but I think they're still going to be I think they're still the favorite in the AFC over the Steelers, although I know the Steelers have a perfect record. And I think I saw something that the Steelers had like one of the easier schedules of the season. Of course, they just beat the Jags, who are now 1-9 this past Sunday. So I think that was a pretty easy game for the Steelers to win. But for me, I'm going to stick with the Chiefs in the AFC. In the NFC, I have to agree with you and still say the Saints. And of course, we mentioned that Drew Brees is down. We don't know for how long he'll be down, but I think this past weekend they showed that with Taysom Hill at quarterback, there's still a great team, great defensive team, and great offensive team as well.
Then we both mentioned the Steelers' perfect record. If they win this weekend, there's a very good chance they can go 16-0. Looking at the rest of their schedule, but also the Jets lost again. I haven't won in I think almost a year or maybe a full year now. They're 0-10. Who do you think? What do you think is more likely, Matthew? 16-0 Steelers or 0-16 Jets?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see both of these things happening, but for me, I have to say the Jets going winless I think is the most likely thing to happen. The reason I say that is because when I look at the Steelers schedule, they have the Ravens, Washington, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Cleveland as their final 6 games. I mean, so I see either Buffalo or Indianapolis maybe possibly beating them because both of those teams, of course, are having great seasons so far. Maybe even potentially Baltimore this Thursday. Although I mean, the Steelers did beat them in their first matchup of the season. But yeah, I think because the Jets are just bad, just crap, as everyone basically would say. I would say that the Jets would be going winless would be more the likelihood.
I think I'm going to agree. I think both are a good chance of happening. I think if the Steelers win this week against their division rival, the Ravens, I think they can have a very good chance at it. Like you mentioned, they still play Buffalo and the Colts, but I think they can beat both of those teams. I think the Jets going 0-16 just seems like a likely thing at this point. They're not a very good team to watch. And look at their remaining games as well. They have to play the Raiders, the Seahawks, the Rams, the Dolphins, the Patriots, and the Browns. So there's a couple of games there which they maybe could challenge for a win, but I think they're losing at least 4 to 5 of those, if not all 6.
Yeah, the only team out of the six you mentioned that has a losing record is the Patriots. All those teams are basically hunting for a wild card spot or in one, or sorry, I should say a playoff spot, or in one right now. And yeah, I think maybe it would come down to week 17 if the Patriots just saying like screw it, we're not going to play for anything. Like if they're not like even in the playoff hunt at that time. But I think yeah, we can both agree, of course, that just because they're bad, I think that's more the likelihood for them to go 0-16.
And then I kind of hinted to it earlier. We're gonna predict the division races, the winner of each division, and a few wildcard teams, Matthew. So why don't you start with the AFC division winners, in your opinion?
Yeah, so going down the stretch for me, like for the final 6 weeks, I'd starting with the AFC East. I would say the Bills. For the North, I'd say the Steelers. For the South, I'd say the Colts, and then for the West, I would say the Chiefs. For me, I think a toss-up it would be the AFC South, as you probably will get to, and also although Miami just lost, I think that they're pretty close with Buffalo. Although some crazy scenario would probably have to happen for the Dolphins to win. But yeah, what about you? What would you say?
Yeah, I agree with Buffalo, the Steelers, and the Chiefs. But in the South, I'm gonna go with the Titans. I think both teams are 7-3, but the Titans at times have looked really good, and they've beaten a lot of other very good AFC teams. So I think I'm going to go with the Titans in this one, but I do think the Colts certainly have a chance at taking that division.
Yeah, definitely. There's no doubt that I think right now we can say that is a toss-up, and I think going into this weekend, as the Titans and Colts are going to face each other in Week 12, we're going to, I think, see who the bigger threat is in the AFC South. But moving on now to the NFC, who would you predict it for the four divisions there?
Also, I'm going to start off with saying my notes for for this document. You have here the notes for the NFC East say, "Who cares?" um, I don't think an NFC East team has any chance at winning a Super Bowl. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what to say about the NFC East anymore. Um, the Eagles are technically first place because of a tie. Um, although they could just have easily have been 3-7. So the rest of the division, this one's close, but I guess I'm gonna go with the Eagles. I think they have a couple of good players, I guess, and they're technically first place right now. So I guess in the East I'll go with the Eagles. In the North, I'm gonna go with the Green Bay Packers. The South with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which I know is one that you're not going to agree with. And in the West, I'm going to go with the Seahawks.
Yeah, I gotta agree with the. I mean, well, starting with the NFC East, I don't think anybody. I agree with you in the sense that I don't think anybody's gonna. Whoever wins that division, I mean, unfortunately, has to host a game. Will probably get beat up by whoever it is that they have to face at home. But I definitely don't think anyone who wins that division has a chance to winning a game in the playoffs. But having said that, I think just because it's 2020 and crazy things can happen with this. Going down the stretch with this NFL or this NFC East division, I'm going to say the Giants to win this division. Although I would definitely say I would definitely put the Eagles at second. But yeah, I mean, just because it's a bad division, I think Carson Wentz hasn't been playing the best football for the Eagles. In Dallas, we know that they lost Prescott for the year. In Washington, I don't think they're even trying to do anything this season. But yeah, I'm just because for craziness, I would say the Giants. Um, Moving on, and then moving to the NFC North, I would say the Packers hold on to their division. I'd also say the Saints went on to their division, and then for the West, which is pretty much the best division in football, I'd say right now the Rams.
Um, I'll say this: if a team from the NFC East wins the Super Bowl this year, I will buy their jersey and wear it on episode of On the Sidelines. So that's gonna be my,
I
my
think it
challenge
might
to the
be.
NFC East.
Yeah, I mean that would be crazy if that would happen if they won the Super Bowl. I mean, yeah, that would be insane.
Moving on to the wild card teams, who do you think are going to be the three that make it out of the AFC?
Yeah, for me, I would say the Titans, Raiders, and Ravens. I mean, I would say about the Ravens that although we did mention they are slipping a little bit. I think that they'll still hang on to a playoff or a wild card spot. And also, I mentioned the Raiders, who almost beat the Chiefs again for a second straight game. Almost did this Sunday, so I think that they'll continue to make the playoffs this season. And then also the Titans. We were both split on the AFC South division, so I'd say for the second place team, which I think is going to be the second place team, the Titans.
Yeah, I agree with you on two of those, the Raiders and the Ravens. Um, you mentioned like we were split on the AFC South. So you went with the team that you didn't pick, which is the Titans, and I'm going to go with the Colts. I think the Colts are slightly better at the moment in terms of statistically anyway. But I think the Titans will pull it out, and the Colts will end up as the playoff team in that division.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the standings right now for the wild card teams, I mean, of course, I think we can say that those seven teams will no doubtly make the playoffs. But if there's a team, because I mean, looking at the standings, like the eighth place team is actually we didn't mention Cleveland. I forgot forgot to mention Cleveland, who's 7-3 right now. Do you
Yeah.
think that they'll because they're in the playoff spot right now? And do you think that maybe they'll potentially make the playoffs, or maybe even the Dolphins?
I think both those two are in contention. I don't think. I mean, both of them have a better record than the Raiders, for example. Raiders are 6-4, so it'd be interesting. I think the Dolphins are kind of an unknown commodity at the moment. Like Tua is having a little bit of trouble at the moment. He looks pretty good at times, but also a little bit shaky at other times. But if the Dolphins keep winning or get back to winning games again, I think they could certainly push themselves into that mix. The Browns, I'm less sure about just because they're the Browns. Kind of like the whole myth about the Bills, like something's going to go wrong at some point. So I'm kind of hesitant to put them in that wild card spot coming into the season, but it's definitely possible. They definitely look like they can make the playoffs. It's just whether or not they'll be able to sort of shake the many years of bad luck that preceded this season.
Yeah, I think the Browns have been under the radar this season. I think I mean not no one's really talking about them make the playoffs. Although they are 7-3, I think they do still have their challenges as a team. And yeah, as you mentioned too with the Dolphins, I think that with Tua, who's in his first season as a starting quarterback for the Dolphins, I think it's kind of tough for him right now. Especially we saw in this past weekend against the Denver Broncos. I mean, yeah, I think we kind of don't know too much about the Dolphins as you mentioned. So I mean, I'd have to agree with you and say that they might be out of the playoffs this season. Um, but now moving to the NFC, who would you say would be the wild card teams there?
Yeah, I've gone with the Saints, the Rams, and the Cardinals. I think it's fair to say that the whoever finishes second in the NFC South is going to be a wild card team. Um, because the NFC North, I think the Packers are going to win, and then the other three teams I think will be kind of hard pressed to get into the wild card picture. The NFC East we already kind of talked about. I don't think whoever finishes second there is going to make it into a wild card spot. Without a miracle. um, and then looking at the NFC West, I think that's the best division, maybe in football at the moment. Um, Definitely in the NFC. I think the Seahawks are going to win. That's something that you and I think disagreed on. I think you said the Rams, uh,
Mm.
but I'll go with the Rams and the Cardinals as the two backup or the two sort of wild card spots coming from the NFC West.
Yeah, for me, I mean, as you just mentioned, we were both split on the NFC West division. So I'd say the second place team for me is going to be the Seahawks, and they'll make the wild card. And then I also think the third place team, which I predict would be the Cardinals, is also going to make the playoffs. And then the other team uh, that we were also split on the NFC South, you said the Bucks. I said the Saints to win the division. So I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to make the playoffs. I think obviously we mentioned that the NFC West is, I think, undoubtedly the best division of football right now, and obviously all three teams have a chance to make the playoffs. And obviously, when you look at the NFC East, I don't think more than one team is even going to make the playoffs. Shouldn't playoffs from the NFC East. Let's be honest, this upcoming playoffs. But yeah, I just think I think those three teams. Um, but you did mention the NFC North. I think I mean, some crazy scenario that could happen is maybe the Cardinals slipping down from that 7 spot in the NFC playoff NFC playoff bracket, and maybe the Chicago Bears maybe going up if they have some kind of winning streak. Of course, they started the season 5-1, and they've just lost 4 straight games. So, I mean, that might be tough to see that happening, but as that could be a potential team to pass the Cardinals right now.
Yeah, it's definitely possible, but I still think the Cardinals and Kyler Murray looks really good, and I expect the Cardinals are going to stay in that sort of 6 to 7 spot in the bracket. Anything else on NFL before we move on?
No, I think
Any other hot takes?
I'm good now. No, just besides the Giants winning the NFC East, no.
That was a pretty hot take. I guess anything's possible in the NFL.
Yeah, and 2020 in general.
Well, exactly. It's been a crazy year. Stranger things have happened, I guess. With the Browns being 7-3.
True.
Okay, then moving on to the NBA. Pretty big week. Free agency starting to kick up a bit. Been a lot of news, especially in Toronto with the Raptors. The biggest news was Fred VanVleet re-signing for what's believed to be the biggest contract by an undrafted player in history, NBA history, for 4 years and $85 million. And then there's also 2 departures, with Marc Gasol going to the LA Lakers for 2 years and $5.3 million, and Serge Ibaka going to the Clippers for 2 years and $19 million. As you can see, I'm here at the Staples Center waiting for the rest of the Raptors championship team to arrive. Matthew, what do you make of those 3 moves, especially the 2 departures?
Yeah, I mean, for me, those 2 departures I think were pretty unfortunate for the Raptors. Of course, both played a big role in the success this past season, and of course with the championship run 2 seasons ago. But yeah, I think it was to let them go, and I think I think right now the Raptors, of course, the other signings who I'll get to at center, I think they're gonna have to find with the 2 signings that they signed at center, who I'm gonna of course mention as I just said. We'll have to see how that role goes in this upcoming season. Of course, with as I just mentioned, there are 2 big names leaving. And then with Van Fleet, I mean, I give props to Van Fleet for signing the biggest contract ever by an undrafted player. I think that was a great accomplishment for Van Fleet, and of course, I give him all the credit in the world. And I think, as I mentioned, he was also a big role 2 seasons ago and last season as well. And yeah, I give him props for that.
Yeah, VanVleet has definitely been one of the best players for the Raptors over the last couple of seasons, and I think re-signing him was the priority for the Raptors. If they didn't, I think there's a lot of teams lining up to take him. As for Gasol, I think he didn't have the best season last year. I think it's fair to say, and I think if the price was right, the Raptors might have tried to bring him back. But I think if they weren't going to give him a lucrative money deal, I think he was just going to see where he could go to win a championship. And I think he picked probably the best place to do that in Los Angeles. With the reigning NBA champions, of course, in the Lakers. Same with Serge Ibaka. I think if the price was right, the Raptors would obviously be interested, but I guess he wanted to win and get paid. And he got both in the Clippers and his old teammate Kawhi Leonard. down in LA. So yeah, it sucks to see them go, I guess, but probably the best move for both of them, I think.
Yeah, I think we can start calling both LA teams the LA Raptors at this point because I think every past player is going. I mean, of course, with Kawhi going to the Clippers and now with Gasol and
Danny
Serge
Green.
going to LA. Sorry,
Danny Green as well went.
Danny Green, formerly a Laker, yeah. But yeah, everyone's just moving to LA, which is, I mean, I guess they just like Hollywood more. I don't know. I mean, although Toronto is a great city too, but yeah, I guess they just want to stay in the U.S. But
The Clippers
anyways,
just need Patrick McCaw now.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they'll need him for any kind of if they even want to try and win a championship this upcoming season. But yeah. Moving on to some other big signings for the Raps these past couple of days. Of course, Chris Boucher re-signed with the Raptors for 2 years, 13.5 million. And as I mentioned too, the Raptors filled in their center position with two signings. One being Aaron Baines and the other being Alex Lynn. Baines going to the Raptors for 2 years, 14.3 million. And yeah, I think. What do you think of these two signings and Chris Boucher as well?
Yeah, I think Boucher was a good signing. He's been a pretty good player for the Raptors. He's Canadian, which is always nice to see as well. He's from Montreal, I think. Um, as for Baines, I think people seem to think he's maybe hasn't realized his full potential yet. He hasn't played didn't play a ton last year, I don't think. Um, so people will be hoping that he can find that best form with the Raptors. Raptors will obviously be hoping that too, giving him $14.5 million. As for Len, I'm not too familiar with him. Sounds like he didn't sign for very much money. I couldn't find the exact number anywhere. Sounds like it was like somewhat close to the minimum, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see what he turns out to be. But I think Baines is going to be sort of the starter at center.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for me too. I think the Raptors undoubtedly had to re-sign Chris Boucher, and as you mentioned, yeah, he is from Montreal. He's a Canadian guy, and I think he has some potential to be a better player than he is right now. And of course, with the Raptors having the 905 as their sort of like developmental team, I think a great system in Toronto with bringing up some G League players who, of course, Boucher was formerly, and bring to their potential. And I think, yeah, definitely Boucher plays that role. And also with Baines and Lynn, I think obviously I don't think this replaces Serge or Gasol. I don't know much. Like to be honest, I don't know too much about both players. I mean, I know that Baines has a fan club. That's most of my extent that I know about Aaron Baines, but or on Twitter, I should say. Um, but yeah, I just think that we'll have to see who becomes the starter for the Raps. I think right now it would be Baines, but yeah, we'll just have to see how the center position rolls for the Raps.
And maybe Messiah Jury and the Raptors have always made these sort of interesting, maybe under the radar signings. Like like Baines has been in the league for a few years. Len, like I mentioned, is sort of a bit of an unknown commodity, but if they work out, then we'll be praising Messiah Jury, I'm sure, because these could be two sort of low key signings for a lot less money than they were paying Ibaka and Gasol as well. So if this cap is now opened a bit to maybe take a run at Giannis in a year, or sign another big free agent now for this year, I think they may have done a really good couple of moves here.
Yeah, I think I believe that they are trying to go for Giannis next offseason. I think that's probably one of the factors that led to the departure of Gasol and Ibaka. So, I mean, yeah, I guess we'll just have to see next offseason if Masai goes for Giannis or not, depending on how the Bucks do. I would say this next season I think plays a big role in where he ends up next season. Um, but yeah, now looking ahead to the start of the season for the Raps, now that we know their departures and who's coming on the team, how do you think they'll fare in the this season?
It's kind of hard to tell. Still pretty early. There's still, I believe, a month and 2 days, I think, until the season starts on Boxing Day. Is it? or is it a month from today
Actually,
on Christmas Eve?
under it's actually under a month from now, December 22nd.
22nd. Okay, so less than a month now. Today's November 24th for context. Um, it's kind of hard to tell. We're not quite. I don't think the Raptors are quite done yet. Um, but I mean the roster looks pretty good. I guess. Like I mean, I think maybe it's a slight downgrade without Gasol and Ibaka. So like Baines could end up being really really good. Len again, I'm not sure about. I think signing Fred VanVleet was the big signing the Raptors sort of needed to kind of shore up their roster a bit more. Kind of get rid of the uncertainty. Will he stay? Will he go? Like they kind of had hovering over them last year. So now they know he's staying for another 4 years. It's time for him to earn that contract. I think he has already, but it's time for him to sort of keep earning it. So I think the Raptors will be good. Don't know how good yet. Obviously, only time will tell that for that one. But interesting to see how the roster kind of finishes off over the next couple weeks and month, I guess.
Yeah, I think we'll have to. I think you mentioned it is. I think it might be a little too early to tell with the season tipping off just basically under a month from now. I mean, of course, we could still have some big free agency signings that impact the Eastern Conference, and that might play some kind of role in how the Raptors finish. But I think right now, I'd say like they're 4 or 5 seed. I think, or 3, 4, 5 seed, somewhere in that range. Um, I think it is. I think they'll still be as great as they were last season. I think they were second in the Eastern Conference, if I'm not wrong. Um, so I think that they'll still have a great season. Obviously, they still make the playoffs, which I think some U.S. analyzers didn't think would actually happen last season. But yeah, I think they'll obviously still make the playoffs, and I think they'll be somewhere like 3, 4, 5, or even just top 4 in the East.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Celtics look really good. They've added a couple players, as we'll get to. So I don't know if the Raptors will be finishing that 1 or 2 spot. The Bucks also look good on paper, anyway. So I think I agree. The Raptors will be sort of in the 3 to 5 range, like a definite playoff team, but not in the bubble of the playoffs. So yeah, I agree with that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and do you have anything else on the Raps before we mention some other signings?
No, not really. I think we'll do a preview closer to the season. Obviously, when more news comes in about the Raptors, we'll keep you updated on that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, as I mentioned there, of course, it was a big free agency weekend in general for a lot of teams. What were the ones that stood out to you the most?
Yeah, one of them that I think was just breaking this morning. I think was Bam Adebayo signed, reportedly re-signing for 5 years and 163 million with the Miami Heat. Um, that's not the only big contract reportedly handed out the last few days. Brandon Ingram signing for 5 years and 158 million in New Orleans, and Jason Tatum signing for a max contract with the Celtics, like I mentioned, for 5 years and 195 million. So there's a lot of money being thrown around right now. Also, another pretty big move was DeMarcus Cousins going to Houston for reportedly 1 year and 2.6 million. So some pretty big signings. There's a few more that you'll mention in a second. Like I said, the Celtics signing Tatum and Adebayo signing in Miami for massive 5 year contracts is sort of proof that the East isn't going to be an easy conference. And people always say the Western Conference is maybe the better conference or has the better teams, the super teams. But I think the East is starting to maybe trend upwards in that direction and maybe even overtake the West this year.
Yeah, I think also, yeah, as I mentioned, a couple other signings this past weekend, first weekend of free agency. One of them being Montrezl Harrell staying in Los Angeles, but instead of the Clippers, he's going to the Lakers for a 2 year, $19 million deal. Of course, we know that the Clippers put Ibaka. I guess Ibaka would be that substitute for the Clippers at at that position. But yeah, it's he's still sitting in the same city, but on a different team. Um, Also, another big deal was Gordon Hayward going to Charlotte for 4 years, 120 million. I mean, that was just I think, kind of shocking for a lot of people when that deal came along. And I mean, I think Gordon Hayward's kind of been injury prone past couple of seasons. I think of course, he had that a big injury a couple of seasons ago. And I think also this past season, if I'm not wrong, he had a big injury. So, I mean, we'll see how that fares, I guess, for the Hornets. And then also Tristan Thompson, a Canadian guy going to the Celtics for a 2-year, $19 million deal. Of course, Thompson's been on the Cavs for a pretty long time now, I'd say. So, I mean, he's finally going to a new team, that being the Boston Celtics. Um, you did mention, though, that I think we all agree that the East is getting tougher by the day with all these new free agency signings. I think also right now, I mean, the Western Conference too, I think would have some tough teams, like, possibly challenging the Lakers for the Western Crown this season. But I think right now I'd still say the Lakers are winning free agency. If you would agree with that.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't disagree with it. I think they're already the best team, obviously winning the NBA championship, and I think they've upgraded their team. So that's kind of a scary thought for the other teams in the league, and especially the Western Conference.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll have to see if we'll see if they're still true to their form this season, which I don't think anyone will doubt. But yeah, and of course, with more free agency signs that come up or anything else for the NBA, we'll preview before the December 22nd start. And I think also preseason, I think, starts it was like December 11th, the week of December 11th. So we might be seeing basketball in just under 3 weeks or so, which will be exciting to see for us, for basketball fans.
That is exciting. NBA Christmas games are always some of the best games of the year, and so is opening night. And to sort of combine the two now and have the opening night the days before Christmas, that's gonna be awesome. I think it's gonna be quite a spectacle, especially on like it's gonna be a for TV product more than it's gonna be for fans. I think this year, so uh, that sort of combination of those three factors is gonna be really entertaining. I think to watch.
Yeah, and also just to mention, I mean, obviously the unfortunate thing is that most teams will probably have no fans in the stands, or maybe a couple might have some kind of capacity when it comes to fans in the stands. But yeah, I think more people are going to be tuning in for during for on television during this season. I think it will be more exciting and entertaining, and probably unprecedented season unlike any other. Of course, we had the bubble, which was probably more unprecedented than this upcoming season. But we'll see what happens, and yeah, we can't wait for basketball to come back.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else on NBA before we wrap this up?
No, I think I'm good. If you have anything else.
No, I think I'm good too. So with that, that's the end of episode number 18 of On the Sidelines now. Thank you for watching as always. My name is Benedict Rhodes.
I'm Matthew Liam Bruni.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.